Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I am Tish and I be Trouble. And if you are a returner, welcome back. Alright, so it is time for chapter 7 and Mask Monday. So if you want to find out what happens next, stick around.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the past.
Alright, Mask Monday. We have the Saki Brightening, Spot Fading, and Hydrating Collagen Essence Mask. And that is the brand right there. I do enjoy these masks. I don't know if I say it. I get kind of wrapped up in my book, so I don't know if I'm saying whether I like the masks or not. But this brand is really good. So usually leaves my face nice and moisturized feeling, you know. All right, I'll put this on, and then we will get to our story. All right, the mask is on. These masks are always quite serum-y. They have a lot of serum in them. Again, this is The Rise of the Deva'shi by Jennifer Alice Provost. We are on chapter 7. I have a playlist in the description box below, and it has every chapter I've read so far on the playlist. This is also a collab with the Beauty Ninjas, and there will be a playlist for all the other beautiful Beauty Ninjas below as well. So let's get started. In 2 days' time, Adhair rode out with his new contingent to the eastern border. It was the most unforgiving assignment in Partholon, as they saw more battles than all other contingents combined. Many speculated as to why there were so many more demons in the east. A common theory was that demons erupted from a great gash in the earth not far from the border, but no one had ever been courageous or foolhardy enough to look. For this reason, the eastern contingent boasted 20 hunters, twice as many as Tegurnin. The other contingents numbered no more than 6. The leader of the eastern contingent was a hard-edged woman called Bryn, who was one of the few hunters left that had been named before Elmar. Many wondered why she remained at the border after all this time, for she surely deserved a less arduous assignment after more than 2 centuries of faithful service to the Queen. But she never asked to be moved from her beloved eastern border, and her few requests were always for the benefit of the hunters, never herself. The hunters in Nuvai assembled outside the gates at midday and gave a respectful farewell to those departing. The contingents filed out in orderly procession, with Adhair's being the last. As he passed me, he threw a garland of flowers at my feet and called out, "Until I return, my lady." I did not look up, choosing instead to examine the dust at my feet, but I could feel Elmar's eyes burning a hole in my back. My first full turn of the season as a huntress was nothing if not peaceful. I fell into my routine patrols, and the other hunters welcomed me into their midst. Initially, I worried that my lack of time in a border contingent would make the others think I was unworthy of my assignment to Tegurnin. At the end of my first day as a huntress, I entered the great hall and slowly made my way to the rear hearth, where the hunters typically congregated at the end of the day. I approached them cautiously, not wanting to overstep my bounds, but Braun and Luth quickly made room for me, saying they would be honored to eat with the little one. From that day forward, all the hunters referred to me as their little one, with the exception of Finley, who fancied me as the little sister he never had and called me his sweetheart, much to the aggravation of the first hunter. Elmar himself always sat as near as possible to me. Finley would frequently tease us, claiming that since the incident in Brennus, Elmar only trusted me to guard him, which earned him more harsh looks from his commander. When I was not on patrol, I spent much of my time with the Queen. Ashera enjoyed having someone with which to share her knowledge, and granted me full access to her library. I devoured the volumes on history, learning all that I could about my new home, but gave magic a wide berth. With the exception of the fire-starting spell, magic had done nothing but turn my life upside down, and I had no desire to delve further into the subject. I was aware that the other hunters could work a few enchantments. For example, Surya could squint towards the sky and gain the clear and far sight of a hawk, a valuable tool for one standing watch. I gladly left such pursuits to my comrades. Instead of learning the ways of magic, I studied maps of the surrounding countryside and discovered where our strongest and weakest points were. I learned about the political structure of Partholon, which consisted of lesser nobles overseeing areas that reported to Ashera, as well as regions to the north populated only by elves, with trolls inhabiting much of the land beyond. Ashera's strongest desire was to eliminate the demon threat so all races could exist peacefully within her borders. However, while she had managed to keep her borders strong, in her long reign she had only managed to keep the vermin out, not send them back to the underworld. I asked the queen if she really thought it was possible to drive out the evil for once and for all, to which she replied that she did not know, but she owed it to her people to try. I also learned that while guarding Tegernon and the queen was a rare privilege, it was also extremely boring. Finley shared that no demon had approached the palace in over 50 winters, and he should know, as he was the one who killed it. This lack of trouble made me wonder why so many were assigned to the palace, for certainly we would be more useful elsewhere. The second hunter replied that prior to the last war only 5 hunters guarded the palace, a fact Esgarth had used to his advantage when the Mordath attacked. Once Aylmar became first hunter, he decreed that the palace and the queen would never again be defended by so few. My relationship with Aylmar seemed to grow if you paid attention to the never-ending stream of gossip. Word quickly spread throughout the palace that the first hunter had begun to smile, but only at the new flame-haired huntress. Apparently, in the nearly 2 centuries Aylmar had resided in Tegernon, he remained solitary, hardly even associating with his own hunters. Some speculated that he had finally found a woman to ease his tensions. Still others speculated I was the one easing him. I ignored all rumors, as they were beneath me, but Aaliyah greatly enjoyed seeking out their source and reprimanding whoever was responsible. While I was the first to strike down any talk concerning the first hunter and myself, I had to admit that I enjoyed his company above all others. We often patrolled together, and he would take me to historic locations around Partholon and tell me stories of what had transpired there. I never had the heart to tell him that Ashera had told me much of this already, as he seemed to take pride in sharing his knowledge with me. Others would question how I could bear to spend so much time with one as dour and as depressing as he, and I brushed off the inquiries by stating, as first hunter, he was my commander, and I could not refuse to accompany him. The reality was that he was different when we were alone. Once we passed through the gates, he lowered his defenses for me, and he was nothing if not the compassionate, noble man I had always known him to be. One day, at the end of summer, almost a full year since I had been named, the first hunter and I were patrolling and found ourselves atop the hill of Torum. We frequently rode without a route in mind, seeing where our mounts would take us while always keeping the palace in sight. After we set the horses loose to graze, we sat under the old oak and surveyed the plain below. The trial by combat was disappointing, I said after a time, and Aylmar nodded in agreement. No one had managed to disarm the unknown, who had been played by Padishan. Will you be the unknown in the next trial? That honor will belong to another, he said with his half-smile. That smile I only saw outside the palace walls. I wish I could compete again. To best you in front of everyone? You would not be able to, he said firmly. You're still overconfident. I did not like his accusation, and, first hunter or not, I decided to teach him a lesson. Oh, I could, and I will. Spar with me now. Aylmar rose as I drew both of my swords, but instead of reaching for his own, he grabbed the spear he kept behind his saddle. The choice of weaponry surprised me, and he quickly knocked the sword from my left hand. Not a good beginning, he said. I only need one sword to defeat you, I retorted. We circled each other for a time, each making half-hearted advances to gauge the other's defense. At first, I easily evaded the spear by blocking his strikes against my upper body, jumping over blows aimed towards my legs, and I waited for him to attack me with more force. Finally, he lunged at me, and in one fluid motion I tossed my sword to my left hand and caught the shaft of the spear with my right, plunging it into the ground at my feet. I gently poked the tip of my sword under his chin and smiled, thinking that I had won. My lord, I purred, only because he hated the title so. He responded with a wicked grin and kicked my feet out from under me. As I fell backwards, dropping my sword, as I lost my balance, he caught me with his free arm and pulled me against his chest. My lady, he said, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. Not fair, I said softly, staring into his blue eyes. You have a longer reach. Battles are not fair, he responded. He made no motion to release me, and I became acutely aware of how visible we were. Anyone in Tegernon who looked to the east would see our unusual position. Elmar, you must let me go. People will talk if we are seen like this. In spite of my words, I put my arms around his waist, only to steady myself, I thought. Let them, he replied as he drew me closer, and his free hand stroked my cheek. Do you know how lovely you are? He asked. But before I could respond, not that I had the slightest idea how, he saw something behind me. Hells, he cursed, and I twisted around to see what had agitated him. It was Bryn's contingent, who were returning early from the eastern border as they dragged a litter behind them. They had lost one. I moved to break free of his arms, but Elmar's hand moved from my cheek to the back of my neck, and he drew my face closer to his. We are not finished here, he said, with an intense look in his eyes. He did not relax his hold until I nodded, and as we hastily mounted and galloped toward the returning hunters, I looked at all the faces in the contingent, and the lack of one, in particular, gave me a feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach. While Elmar spoke with Bryn, I left my horse and approached the litter. I drew back the cover slowly, as if I was in a dream. It was Adhair. I screamed softly as I dropped the shroud and backed away from his body. I stumbled into Elmar, who had instantly come to my side when he heard me cry out. He tried to turn me towards him, away from the litter, but I could not stop staring at Adhair's face. His right cheek had a large burn there were long gashes around his neck. His eyes remained open, eternally frozen in fright. Adhair had always been so brave and daring. I could not imagine what kind of horrors he saw to emblazon such terror on his face. Let them continue to Tegernon, Elmar whispered in my ear. Let them bring him home. I nodded, and Elmar signaled to Bryn that they should continue. We stood by the side of the road and watched the somber procession until it disappeared behind the palace walls. What happened? I asked, not turning to look at him. Bryn said he was on watch, and he saw a pack of 4 in the distance. Rather than wait for the others, he went after them himself. His voice was bitter as he relayed the story of Adhair's death. I made a small noise that was intended to be a laugh, and wished I had some words of comfort to offer Elmar, given that he saw every wound sustained by his hunters as his personal failure. Unfortunately, I had nothing. That sounds like Adhair, I said, always wanting to be the hero. Elmar put his hands on my shoulders, and I leaned my forehead against his chest, grateful for his support. He will be remembered as a hero, he said softly, the bitterness having left his voice. Latera, I know he was your friend, and I wish I could have kept you from seeing him like that. Once Bryn told me who it was, I wanted to stop you, but you already knew. I may have lost my balance, for he caught me around the waist and held me to him, his lips so close to my ear I could feel his breath as he tried to calm me. I was so numb I hardly noticed his gentle words, and I never knew how long we stood there, the first hunter holding me while I tried to regain myself. My mind has gone blank, and I let the numbness wash over me and soak its way into my soul. At length his words reached me and brought a small portion of me back to this horrible, unwanted reality. Do you need to speak with the Queen? I asked, not daring to face him. Yes, but it can wait, he replied. Bryn will speak with her first. I pulled away from him and looked around for my horse, who was nowhere to be found. Understanding my confusion, Elmar told me he had asked Bryn's hunters to bring the horses to the stables. He wanted to create distance between myself and Adhair's body and give me time to regain my composure before I was confronted with his funeral. I turned to him and simply nodded, not trusting my voice. We started down the road to the palace, but when we were close to the dark gates, I halted. They were already constructing his pyre in the great square. I think I need to be alone, I said hoarsely as I turned to walk away. Elmar tried to catch my hand, but I evaded him. I know you only want to help, and I appreciate it, I said apologetically. Go speak to Ashera. I know you have obligations. He reached for my hand again, and this time I let him take it. My obligations can wait, he said as he moved in front of me. Elmar took my chin in his hand and tilted my face to his, forcing me to meet his eyes. He was not looking at me with sadness or pity, and as he held me with his powerful gaze, I realized that it was empathy, something I did not deserve. I could not look at him and manage to walk away, so I turned my eyes to the pyre. "No, they can't," I said as I pulled myself free. He did not reach for me again, and I did not turn back. I walked like one possessed through the busy streets of Tegernen, and almost without knowing where I was headed, my feet brought me to the Sola. I found Aaliyah inside, curled up on the cot Adhair used to call home. I sank down next to her, and we mourned our fallen friend together. Adhair's body had lain atop the pyre for the rest of the day, wrapped in pristine white fabric to hide the mortal wounds. When the child's sun was about to set, Ashera spoke to the assembled throngs and declared that Adhair had given his life to save his contingent, and stories of his bravery would be told for many winters. The queen then whispered a few words, and with a touch of her hand, magical fire erupted to consume him. As he left to meet the gods, the hunters formed a ring around the pyre to guard his ascent to the next world. I could not bring myself to approach the blaze and watch the somber affair from the tower above the gates. As he always did, Elmar found me. Normally, I would have questioned why he was not among the hunters, for, as first hunter, shouldn't he be making a speech or something? But I was too drained to care, and we watched the fire together until I broke our silence. "It's my fault," I said as I stared into the flames. "It's not," he said harshly. "Did you send demons to ambush Bryn and her people? Did you strike the blow that killed him?" "I may as well have. You knew he wasn't ready, but I didn't listen, and like a fool I begged you to name him. It should be me upon that fire." "Would that make you happy? Death?" he demanded. "Do not make yourself suffer for his death, the way I made myself suffer for Mina and the others. You told me that was wrong. Now prove to me that you meant it." I turned my back, knowing that he spoke the truth, that my death would not make things right, but I knew what would. "Assign me to Bryn's contingent," I said quietly, as my hands trembled and my stomach tied itself in knots. "No!" he shouted as he grabbed my shoulders and spun me to face him. "No! You will stay here where the queen has assigned you." "You mean where you assigned me," I shouted in reply, my voice more cruel than I intended. His eyes glowed in anger, and I wanted to yell at him, scream, beat his chest with my fist. I wanted to rail at him that he should not have listened to me, because he knew Adhair was not ready, and yet I pushed to have him named. Didn't Elmar know not to place such importance on the requests of an insipid girl? That he should have reprimanded me instead of daring to ask such things of him? I was so angry I could hardly see him through my fury, and I could barely speak for my rage. So I cried. I tried to raise my hands to hide my tears from him, but I trembled so much I could hardly move. Elmar gently drew me to him and cradled my head against his shoulders, and just as he had 2 winters past, he whispered that it would be all right, that nothing could hurt me as long as he was there. He pulled me to the floor of the walkway, and we sat against the rough stone. He held me, soothing me as if I was a baby, until I was calm and could speak again. When I thought my voice would not fail me, I said, "Please send me to the border to replace him. It's where I should have been all along." Here I was, making another foolish request, and he should have been angry with me. Instead, he looked at me with kindness, maybe something that went even further than kindness, and his voice was soft when he replied. "It won't bring your friend back," he said as he brushed tear-soaked hair from my eyes. "I know." I looked up at him with pleading eyes. "You know it's true. I should have been at the border instead of him. I am only in Tegernen because you wanted me here." He pursed his lips, but let me continue. "You say you can deny me nothing. Let me make this right." I held his gaze as I waited for him to argue with me, to deny what I had said, but he did not. At length he closed his eyes and tried to rub the weariness away, but his voice betrayed his sadness. "Must you leave me?" he asked as he kept his eyes shielded from me. "I must fulfill my duty." My head ached with sorrow, and I laid it on his shoulder as I watched the burning pyre. I loved the feel of him next to me, as if I was absorbing some of his strength to replace my own that had waned. I hoped we could remain there forever, sitting on the floor of the watchtower with his arms around me, undisturbed by time. I did not move or speak. So dearly I wanted us to remain unchanged. Elmar may have felt the same, as the fire had faded to embers before he spoke again. You made this bearable for me. I do not want to think of how hard it will be to watch you leave. This statement bewildered me, for Elmar seemed to enjoy being the first hunter. While he certainly was grim and solitary within the palace, it was just his nature to keep others at arm's length. He never gave me the impression that he found life integral and unbearable, and I wanted to ask him what he had meant by that statement. I left it for another time, and offered him what little reassurance I could. I swear to you I will return. As I said the words, he dropped his hands from his face. When I dared to look at him, I was taken aback by how striking he was in the firelight. For a moment I wanted to retract my words and beg him to let me stay, just to remain near him, but I had to right this wrong. I encircled his neck with my arms and tried to get as close to him as possible, wanting to memorize exactly how it felt for him to hold me, how his arms enveloped me in safety and warmth. I thought I would weep again, so I buried my face in his chest to hide my tears. He nestled me closer to him. I felt gentle tugs at my hairline and realized he was unbraiding my hair. As he ran his fingers through my curls, he tenderly kissed my forehead. I will hold you to that oath, he said softly, his lips against my skin. We sat together until Adhair's pyre burned itself out. The combination of the chill night air and the hard stone floor made us stiff and awkward, and we bumped into each other as we rose. The great square before the palace was deserted, and the only sound was our footfalls echoing on the stone steps. Elmar walked me to my chambers, but before I could enter he pulled me to him in a tight embrace. I would beg you to stay, or forbid you from going, if I thought it would do any good, he murmured into my neck. If you need anything while you are there, send word to me, and you will have it. If you want to return, let me know, and I will retrieve you myself. And please, my lady, keep your word. I placed a hand on each of his shoulders and stood on my toes to make myself as close to his eye level as possible. I do not say anything I do not mean, I said, as I managed a small smile. Tears rolled down my cheek, and I again questioned my resolve. If he had asked me to stay at that moment, I would have recanted, but he did not, and instead drew me to him once more and kissed the top of my head. I thought I felt something cold, as if a teardrop had fallen, but I must have been mistaken. He whispered something I could not understand, and then he was gone. All right. Next week, we will have Chapter 8. And these feel really good. Alright, what do you think of the story so far? What do you think is going to happen? If you have any guesses about the future of the story, put them down in the comment section. Again, this is a collab with the Beauty Ninjas. I have a playlist linked in the description box below. Go check everyone out, see what they got going on for their Mask Mondays. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe here. All of that is below as well. I hope every single one of you have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the